Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining. I'm Amy Miller, hopping on live today. If you are joining and you can hear me, go ahead and drop a thumbs up into the chat. Today, we're talking about how to get more from your team, including what helps people actually perform at their best, what truly drives them, and whether your team knows how to best leverage their strengths together. And research shows that one of the biggest factors in team performance is whether someone is actually tapping into what drives them. So here's a question that I want you to think about today. What if it's not that your team member is unmotivated? What if they are just not finding the connection just yet between what drives them and what they're being asked to do, either the task that they're doing or the way that they are going about the work that they're doing? And so today we are looking at how to identify what drives each person on your team and how to shape their role so that they feel a real meaningful connection to the work. Now, why is that important to find a meaningful connection to the work? Because research shows it drives retention, having a meaningful connection to the work. And without that, disengagement can slowly creep in. And over time, when people aren't feeling connected to the work that they're doing, that's when, you have loss of retention and loss of engagement. And there's a peer-reviewed study of almost just under 500 professionals that found that meaningful work increases performance through two specific pathways. And this is how much someone gets to use their strengths and how engaged they feel with the work itself. And today I'm going to give you 3 tools that you can start using right away. And so go ahead, drop into the chat before I dive into the tools here. Just one word, or if you're watching the replay, you can leave a comment, just one word. What's the one thing that you wish your team had more of right now? And then if I get some comments, I'll circle back to that. Okay, so the tool number 1 is to protect your core focus time. And you want to do that for yourself and then also as a leader, and then also encourage your team to protect their core focus time as well. And in order to make progress toward what is meaningful, you have to honor and protect that time. Otherwise, you're not likely to make progress toward the goal. And you may have heard of something called the CEO schedule. And the core idea behind this is to protect a block of uninterrupted focus time every day for the one task that matters most that day. And that is, of course, going to be different for each person on your team. And you may have also heard of something called eating the frog first. So that's sort of similar. It's doing the hardest, most important task first before at the start of your day, before the day gets away from you, and then you find a reason to put it off. And that is part of it. But the piece that I'm focusing on, that I want you to also focus on, is to pay attention to the timing. You want to protect that block of your uninterrupted core focus time during the part of the time of the day where you naturally feel most energized. And that doesn't have to be the first thing in the morning, just because that's sort of the rule. Now, for some people it's morning, but for others it might be later in the day. So there's not a universal answer here. It's just your answer and where you feel most energized. And by paying attention to the part of your day when you feel most energized and protecting that time, you're developing more self-awareness on how you perform better. So here's mine, for example. So my focused work that requires my core focus, uninterrupted focus, and my maximum brain power. So that's writing, content development, prepping for client work. So for me, this happens in the morning most of the time, because this is when I'm my sharpest. So I'm feeling creative in the morning. This is when I've got lots of energy and my ideas are flowing. Now for me, by 3 o'clock, my energy can start to dip a little bit. And then after dinner, it fades even more. So then if I still have energy and some energy, and even if I'm not at my peak performance in those windows, and I still want to be productive, well, I pay attention to that. And then I just shift to something, a task that I need to get done, but it doesn't require as much brain power. Or maybe it's lower stakes tasks, so it's not requiring my best thinking. So when you know, so the practice is to know when you are your sharpest, and then protect that window for the task that matters most for you that day or that week. And leadership starts with self-leadership. So you want to demonstrate that, model this behavior for your team by protecting your own focus first, and then your team will be more likely to follow. And research on behavioral leadership backs this up. It's a social learning theory that team members tend to follow the behaviors that their leaders are modeling, good and or bad. So just by protecting your focus time and even talking about that habit and encouraging that in your team, well, then they're more likely to do the same. So encourage your team to ask themselves when they feel sharpest, and that's something that you can do to start to implement this practice this week. Just that one question you can ask each of your team members: when do you feel your sharpest? And this tells you when and where and how you can help your team protect their best hours. Okay, so that's tool number one. The second tool is something that I use myself for years now, and it's something that I use with my coaching clients as well. I call it identify your drivers. And so we talked about how we need to feel a meaningful connection to the work we do, and that otherwise research shows that engagement and retention can both drop off when that connection is missing. So why is that? We don't feel motivated to do things that we don't feel connected to. Sometimes things that we don't understand the why behind, we can't really feel a connection there. Or if it's something that we don't personally value, well, then we're much less motivated to do the thing. Now, of course, at work, there will always be things that we have to get done that don't necessarily energize us. But as long as there's a mix, some tasks that you genuinely feel connected to alongside the ones that you don't, well, then you're more likely to feel motivated. And then when you're motivated, you create momentum. And then what happens is we get more done with less effort. So when a team member appears unmotivated, in my experience, it's rarely that they're just an unmotivated person. More often it's the work itself, or sometimes it's the way they've been asked to go about getting the task done, that either one of those is not tapping into what drives that team member. Now, there may be parts of their job that genuinely energize them, but the way that they're going about it may not be driving them. It may not be energizing them. Also, just in thinking about when a team member can feel unmotivated just with the way that they're going about getting their work done, there's research in organizational behavior that shows autonomy, including how we get our work done, is one of the intrinsic motivators that contributes to job satisfaction. So for example, the leader sets a clear goal and explicitly articulates the why behind it, but then leaves it up to the team member for them to, however they want to go about getting it done. You know, I trust you to get it done. I'm here for support. If you need me, you know, reach out. Do you have what you need? Here's the goal. Here's the why behind it. I trust you to get there. And this way the employee still leads their own process in a way that they likely feel more confident in, and then are more likely going to enjoy it more. So I've worked in leadership teams, for example, where the leadership team wasn't seeing the result that they wanted. And so their instinct was to apply more pressure, to tighten deadlines, to create more urgency and more accountability. Well, then, so the intention is to improve performance, but then what often happens is the opposite. Then the team member feels more anxious, and then they start to question themselves. They hesitate to make decisions. This creates leads to procrastination, lowered creativity, and ultimately performance declines. And then this reinforces leadership's belief that the team or the team member needs even more pressure. This is a classic example of the self-fulfilling prophecy, and also the golem effect. And that is where lower expectations and pressure-based leadership can unintentionally produce the exact results or very results that we're trying to avoid. Now, this is human nature, human psychology. So I experience this myself as well. This is why it's so important to choose as best as you can who you surround yourself with. So I notice that when I'm around, whether it's in my personal life or professional life, people I'm working with and or for, people who genuinely believe in me and they have full confidence that I'm going to succeed, I feel more confident, I perform better, I enjoy the experience and the process more. And this could be if I'm preparing a meal for someone, if I'm leading a workshop, if I'm preparing to take on a new challenge, then I can tend to be more likely to rise to the expectations when those expectations are higher. But when I feel micromanaged, or like people don't necessarily have confidence in my ability, well, I naturally become more anxious and can second guess myself, and then performance declines. So this is why expectations, both of ourselves and of others, matter so much, because our expectations, our beliefs inform our behaviors, which ultimately create our outcomes. So think about someone on your team and ask yourself if your expectations of them are helping them grow, or if they are maybe unintentionally limiting their performance. All right, so here's the action that you can take with your team this week to help your team understand what drives them. Have a one-on-one conversation, and to help them get curious themselves about, okay, what are my drivers? And then encourage your team members to actually do the things that drive them. And then motivation naturally follows. And I'll share an example in a moment here. So, but first, what are drivers? I define drivers as emotions or activities that energize someone and pull them toward meaningful work. And I believe that we each have 2 to 3 core drivers that you want to try to identify. So I'll share my example. My drivers are freedom, self-expression, and helping others. So freedom would be an emotion, self-expression and helping others, these would be actions or activities. And then the key is, once you know your drivers, the next step is to find activities that let you lean into your drivers, to do the thing, to feel the thing, or likely both. So for me, when I go for a run, sometimes in the morning, or when I go for a walk in the evening after all my core focus work is done and the bulk of my work day is done, well, I feel very free. This is freedom that I'm giving myself during those times. So these are activities that help me lean into that driver, freedom. And then when I'm creating content, like right now, well, then I'm expressing myself, and that's something that I really enjoy. And then when that self-expression helps somebody else, well, then I'm helping others. And so I get to tap into basically all of my 3 drivers at the same time. Now, you don't have to start living all of your drivers every part of every day. If this is new, start small. You can once a day or once a week build in something, some activity or action that lets you tap into your drivers. And then you want to do that consistently. And when you do, you show up with more energy, and then you can help your team do the same. And then you're going to get more out of your team with less effort, without adding more hours. And there's a great article in Harvard Business Review. I shared the title in the description, so you can check that out if you like. And they have a book as well. I'm going to check out the book. But it identified, the researchers identified 4 core emotional drives. They talk about the drive to acquire. So these are drivers at work. So this is the drive for recognition, reward, and advancement. And they talk about the drive to bond, and this is having that connection, feeling like you belong with your colleagues. They talk about the drive to comprehend, and this is meaning, having that meaningful connection to the work that you can master, you can grow with. And then they talk about the drive to defend, and this is about fairness and trust and feeling protected by the organization. So the personal drivers that I shared, I feel like they tie into these a bit here. Just the personal drivers are a more specific individual lens than the broader 4 drives that the article mentions. But it's tapping into, your drivers are also tapping into the ones that I shared, research that runs deep into how we're wired. So the leadership action that you can take this week is to have one-on-one conversations with each person on your team, where you're helping them work toward identifying their top 2 or 3 drivers, and then have a conversation with them to help you both find ways that they can weave their drivers into the work that they're already doing. And I encourage you and your team to find moments and activities where you can employ your drivers both inside work and outside of work, because when you do, you're honoring your intuition, which helps you prioritize what is meaningful. So we can't prioritize what is meaningful if we don't know what is meaningful. And if we feel called to do something, but we keep ignoring that instinct, well, we're not going to prioritize it. So this action or activity of identifying your drivers and then leaning into them helps to build greater self-awareness and self-trust, and ultimately self-confidence. And it helps you feel good when we're doing at least part of the day each day things that we genuinely love and we feel like we're good at and we enjoy. Well, we're more motivated. So if you're feeling unmotivated, go do one of your drivers, and then you can come back to the task that maybe you've been procrastinating on, and I bet you're going to feel more motivated. All right, now tool number 3. The third tool, I love this one. This is an organizational psychology concept, and it's about building your team's map. It's knowing who knows what on your team or within your organization. And the term is transactive memory systems. And this shows up in technology too, but we're talking about on the people side here. And in plain terms, that's just what it is. It's knowing who knows what. So for example, if you don't have the answer or the tool or the resource, but you know who within your organization or on your team does, well, then you can go to them. If you don't have a method of the best way of doing something, but you know who on your team is good at that thing, well, then you can go reach out to them, and you can just take and instead of reinventing the wheel, you can copy what already works. And then also this way, when people know who knows what and who's responsible for what on their team, then you minimize duplicating efforts. Maybe 2 people on your team, I've seen this happen before in organizations, they recognize an area that needs some improvement and they have an idea and then they work on it, but they're working on it separately rather than together. So then they're duplicating efforts. And this transactive memory systems, this traces back to psychologist Daniel Wegner's original research on organizational behavior and transactive memory. There's a field study of over 100 work teams that found that a team's shared system for tracking who knows what directly predicted team performance. And then there's a separate longitudinal study that found that these systems are built over time and through intentional practice. So I find that encouraging. It's not instant. It doesn't have to be instant, but you and your team can build this system, build your team's map for understanding who knows what. And when you do this, you help your team perform more efficiently, and you empower each individual because they now know, hey, the team can come to me for this, or I can go to this person for this. And this helps with team collaboration, cohesiveness, and elevated confidence in the team's ability to succeed. All right, so how do you build this? I'm sure there are lots of ways. I'll share my idea. If you have an idea or something that you plan to try or have tried, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you, or you can email me. But my idea is to have each member of your team prepare a 5 to 10 minute share. It could be just a conversation. It could be a talk, maybe a few slides. And here's the prompt. Here's what I do best, and here's how I do it. And then you can have the team deliver their shares or presentations within a dedicated team day, like a team building exercise, or you can rotate through regular team calls. And when you do this, 2 things happen. So people might recognize, that is a skill that I need help with, and now I know exactly who to go to. And then of course the person sharing feels seen, they feel valued for what they're good at, which chances are it's also something that drives them, something that they enjoy. So then this exercise also gives each team member an opportunity to tap into their drivers, and it helps to build both self and social awareness all in one exercise. And if you try that exercise, definitely let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear. Now, there is research that shows that team building exercises don't always pay off. They can fall short, especially when they don't have anything to do with the actual work or how the team operates day to day. So for example, you can take your team bowling, and maybe that's fun for the people that like bowling. But if the activity doesn't have anything to do with how your team collaborates or does the work, then whatever connection that was built stays on the bowling lane. And whatever friction the team had walking in, well, they still have that friction walking out. So research shows, on the other hand, though, that team building exercises that are tied directly to the actual work or how the team operates, well, these are the ones that pay off in the long run. And Gallup research found that teams that focus on strengths see about a 12.5% increase in productivity. And teams that or people who focus on their strengths are 6 times more likely to be engaged at work. And so this here's what I do best exercise. It's a trust builder, but it's also playing directly to your team's strengths. So if you are listening to the replay, so for example, maybe there's somebody on your team that is really strong in prospecting if you're in sales, or if you're in medical sales, maybe there's somebody on your team that's really strong in the white papers. So who on your team is good to go to for what? Okay, all right, so let's recap 3 things that you're walking away with this week. 1, know when you're sharpest and protect that time, both for yourself and for your team. And then 2, identify your drivers, both for yourself and each person on your team. And then encourage your team to find ways to build their drivers into the work that they're already doing. And then number 3 is to build your team map, that transactive memory systems, know who on your team knows what, and then build a system that puts that to use. So it's the same hours that you're getting from everyone, but sharper use of them and likely more energy. Now, if you want a simple way to start putting these tools in practice for yourself, something I'd like to share with you. If you're interested, you can reach out and let me know and I'll send it to you. This is a tool I developed for my coaching clients, and I actively use it myself as well. I call it the Daily Self-Leadership Reset. So happy to share it with you. It's a simple worksheet that takes about 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. And it's built on these ideas that we just covered. 1, bookending your day with intention. And so starting your day with intention and then bookending your day with in circling back to that intention. And this daily leadership reset helps you name your 3 priorities for the day and flag any leadership moment that you might need to prepare for. And then close the day with a quick reflection. This is your mini after action review where you're reflecting back on what went well and what you would like to handle differently next time. And this practice, it ties in the energy piece as well, the drivers piece and the team piece, because when all three work better when you are leading with intention yourself first as a leader. Thank you for watching. That's it for today. If this is something you'd like to go deeper on, building this as a team practice, not just a personal one, this is the kind of work that I do with my coaching and my workshops. You can reach out to me at amyleemiller.com. You can message me, leave a comment here or on LinkedIn. And you could also email me, amy@amyleemiller.com. All right. Thanks for watching. I will plan to see you next Monday at 2 p.m.